All right, we are now live. I think I want to make sure that we're actually there, but I presume so.
We are live.
So, okay, great. Welcome, Chelsea. It's so
Thank
good
you
to
so much
see
for
your
having
face.
me.
I know.
It's been so long.
I know. I mean, we've only seen each other in person at FinCon, I think, in 2019, and otherwise, everybody's connections is online. But I feel like it's normally like Twitter, Instagram, or something. So it's good to have a back and forth face. So
absolutely,
we see your face all the time because we, stalk your Instagram and everything. So I'm used to seeing you at that desk.
You feel like you know what's going on in everybody's lives, but we haven't actually face-to-face spoken. So this is good.
I know, it's so funny how that works. Anyway, so welcome. So for those of you who don't know Chelsea, she is the founder of Smart Money Mamas, which is her full-time gig now. In the past, she worked for Goldman Sachs. Is that
was
right?
My first job, and then I was at a hedge fund in Boston. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And a number of years ago, she left that corporate world to do money stuff for moms ever since. And she's doing some awesome stuff. She's got her Smart Money Mamas Society. And what we're going to talk about today is an upcoming event next month, which is going to be totally awesome. So
it's always fun. So I left my job about a month before my second child was born. So every time he has a birthday, I have a little bit of like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 4 years now. Because I time it by when he turns a new year.
That's actually really cool. So if you want to maybe start by giving us a little bit of a just recap of what the event is. And, you've done your Smart Money Mama Summit in the past in October. Is that right? Yeah. You do it in Octobers. So this is the first year you're doing this legacy event, right?
Yeah. So in the past, we did 2 Mamas Talk Money events. We did one in 2019 and one in 2020. Both were great. We had a lot of fun. But we took last year off to try to figure out how do we make this more impactful and how do we really get the community going and having some deeper discussions about money. I think we saw a lot of people in our core community ready to go beyond like, okay, let's talk about budgeting 101 and really get into how do we make big changes and how do we really align with our values and do things like that. And so what we decided to do is we're going to do these weekend events twice a year. We're going to do one in April and one in October, and each one will have a different theme. So as you mentioned, this one is called Mamas Talk Money, the Legacy You Leave. And we wanted to start here because so many of us, especially when you're parents, you're thinking about what is that impact we're having on our kids, right? How can we give them better opportunities, make sure that we leave them in a community that is thriving and that we think aligns with, being good people and the people they want to be. And so what often happens is we think that's something we'll deal with in the future. Like when I figure out my money, when they get older, whatever, because we're so busy. It's so easy to not talk about this topic. And so we wanted to create kind of a container of, let's think bigger picture. Let's talk about what wealth means. Let's talk about what do we want to teach our kids, because it's the little habits every day that actually build that legacy. It's not one decision you make towards the end of your life or one decision you make once you have more money. It's all the things they see us do every day. And so that's what this conference is really about. We're going to walk through what are your family money values? What legacy do you want to create? And then the last day is, what are the actual steps you have to take to get there? So we're going to talk about the different ways to build wealth, the small steps you can take to kind of get the ball rolling, because this is a big thing, right? You're trying to think about something that might seem totally impossible compared to where you are right now. And so we want to help people make those steps. So in this event, we're going to have, everything is live, which is crazy. It's going to be a tech feat for me, but we're going to do everything live. We're going to have panels and keynotes, and every day we're doing a 90-minute group workshop. And so we're going to walk through a specific thing where you're taking action on that day's talks. And so I will teach for a little while. We'll give a question. We'll actually break people into groups of 5 to 7 women to talk about whatever the question is, and then come back together and do another set of questions. So that's what we're doing in April.
Yeah. And I think it's a really big point for you to say that, like, we want to wait till we have our stuff all figured out before we teach our kids. But if we wait until we have it all figured out, they're going to be grown. And the time they really need to start the money stuff is when they're kids, so that when they are grown, they have a good foundation. So,
Chelsea, how much of this is focused on like the setup for your kids versus like the overall thing that you have always been a champion of just having like your whole adult life in order and like the emergency binders and those types of things? So this sounds like it's maybe a little bit different with a little more kid focus.
So there's a couple sessions specifically on kids, but this is really about what do you want your life and your finances to look like? Because I think there's so many great resources and ways to intentionally teach your kids about money, right? Having the right allowance system, having the right conversations. But what research has shown is the majority of the way kids learn is just watching us, right? And so it's giving you that space of like, how do I talk to myself about money? How does my kids hear me refer to things? What do I want to intentionally be doing and them see me doing? And so the whole first day, we really don't talk about kids as much. We talk about what does wealth? What is the true meaning of wealth? Why do you want financial freedom? What are family money values? And then breaking generational money cycles. I'm super excited. That's the last panel of the day on Friday, which is our first day. And we have Dasha Kennedy from The Broke Black Girl, Rita Soledad from Wealth Para Todos, and Dee Olatero from The Rich Immigrant. And we're going to just talk about like, if the legacy you want to build is different than what your parents did or your grandparents did, how do we, A, give ourselves permission to make that change, and B, navigate the fact that our family structure might not always be supportive of those changes? And how do we make sure that we're protecting ourselves in our island, for lack of a better word, while still maintaining good relationships with our family? So I think that's going to be a really important conversation.
I'm so excited. I was so excited to see that Dasha's one of your speakers. She is totally fabulous. And
she's amazing.
We share her stuff all the time in Women's Personal Finance for a darn good reason. So
yeah, she's fantastic.
How did you pick your speakers for this event?
Oh my goodness. So the first thing we did was laid out the kind of order of what we wanted. What did we want the end result to be? And the end result was really like having a clear vision of what you want to create in those first steps. And so we actually broke down all the panel topics first. And then we went on a mission to find people who were going to have really interesting stories and connections about those topics. And then specifically, like, could we find people with similar personality styles, because we want these panels to feel like you're sitting and listening to a group of friends talking more than like we've never met each other before and this is super awkward, right? And so we did that, but we did have some certain specifications. And so as a white cis woman, I have my own limitations. And so we make sure we always have 50%, a minimum of 50% of our speakers, both panel and keynote, are women of color. And we do that across the board. And so making sure we kind of balance all those things as well, and that everyone feels represented at an event like this.
Yeah, well, clearly that is the way we do things around here, though I don't think we've set any specific percentage targets. So I like that you're that intentional, that you actually have a number in mind, because it's so easy to mean to focus on that, and then you go to the people you know, and often the people you know are the people who look like you. So
yeah, so setting percentages was something that felt really uncomfortable at first, of like, but one of my best friends is a diversity and inclusion educator, and she was like, you have to set a percentage, because exactly what you're saying, you're going to go to the people you know and are in your network who are most likely going to think the same way as you, look the same way as you. And so by setting that percentage, you're intentional. And so we've gotten much more comfortable with it, but I think it's let us find, regardless of race, right, people that we wouldn't have otherwise come across. And so that's been really cool experience.
Yeah. And then I really like you're talking about how in the past you've done a lot of like intro budgeting, et cetera. And this is really meant to dig in a little deeper. And I think for some folks that can be really scary when the money stuff is really new. I think it's really important because there's so much content online that's like flashy and, you know, just start. But then what happens once you've started? We talk about how you can start an investment account with $5, which is absolutely fabulous. Like, I'm not downplaying that at all. But then how do we go from we've invested that first $5 to how do we grow our wealth and our financial situation so that we are setting ourselves up on solid footing?
First of all, someone in the comments said they're seeing one event at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. That would be a typo. We're definitely not doing anything at 11 p.m. Eastern time. So I apologize for that. That would be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And I want to mention too, like, just because we're not talking about like budgeting 101 or how to start an investment account, this is really for people, regardless of where they are in your journey, because we're talking bigger picture. We're talking, what do you want and what is your why? And I think this is another part too of, you start that first investment account with $5, which, like you said, is fantastic. You start your budget, but then all our old habits want to pull us back. Life gets busy and we're like, it's just easier to go back to what I was doing. Whereas when you've really centered in your why, and even especially your why outside yourself, we of course want to have that sense of worthiness and self-worth that we want to do it for us. But as parents, sometimes when we can center it on, this is good for me, but this is also really good for my kids, it's that much easier to stick to. And so don't be too intimidated by the fact that it's going to be different. It's going to be a different kind of event than a lot of kind of summits you've seen. But regardless of where you are, I think this is a good opportunity to think deeper about your money.
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead.
I think how you framed that is a really good point, Chelsea, because moms especially don't often do as many things for ourselves. So yes, thinking about it in a different way, even if the end result is the same, can definitely be a more motivating angle to get us to pay attention. So,
have you guys read Glennon Doyle's Untamed?
No. But okay. I mean, I've heard people talk about it a lot.
It's fantastic, but she has one line in there that jumped out to me when I read it. And it was, what if the main goal of a mother is not to be a martyr, but a model, and show our kids how to live fully? And I'm butchering some of the words. And like, I love that. And that's a lot of what we'll talk about here, of like, if we want our kids to value themselves in their worth, if we want our kids to build themselves financial stability and growth, we have to do that too. Like, we can't just like expect them to have a totally different reaction to us. And frankly, they might, right? Some of us are very different from our parents. It's just that, why did that happen? Like, was it because it was a visceral negative reaction to, I don't want to do what you did? Or was it like, where's it coming from?
How would you talk to people who have not had kids yet or don't ever plan to have children? Is this just not an event for them? Or are there pieces that might be useful even if you don't plan on having children of your own?
No, so we actually tend to have a fairly decent segment of our audience that isn't moms. And I think that regardless of who you are, whether you plan to have children or not, there are people in your lives that you impact. You have nieces and nephews. You have a community that you want to leave better than it was before. And you also want to think about, how are my choices financially aligned with my values, aligned with who I want to be and the family I want to be, whatever that family structure looks like for you. And so there's 2 sessions, I think, that are specifically about kids that may not be as impactful to you, but might be if you have nieces, nephews, people that you care about, godchildren. And so I think this is really a good place for anybody to start. If you don't have kids yet, this is a good time to start building that foundation, right? Especially getting centered with your partner on like, what are the lessons we want to teach together? Because the more you guys can be on the same page before you have kids, the fewer arguments and the, more clarity that your kid has, not getting mixed messages. But if you don't plan to have kids, I think it's really that impact on your community, which we'll talk about a lot as well. We're doing a panel on voting with your dollars with Tanya Hester, Kyara Gray, and Amy Dominai. And so for those who don't know, Tanya is from Our Next Life, and she recently wrote Wallet Activism. Kyara is the co-founder of Charm City Buyers, and so she does a lot of work investing in traditionally Black neighborhoods and making sure you're preserving the neighborhoods and not negatively gentrifying spaces and pushing people out. And then Amy Dominai is really the founder of social investing, socially responsible investing. Dominai Investments is a big player to that. So we're going to have a conversation about like, how do we use our financial power to make a better world? And we should all want that regardless of whether we have kids.
Yeah. It's kind of like, why would I invest in schools if I don't have kids? It's like, well, why would you invest in the world if you don't have somebody coming after you? It's like, well, yeah, hopefully to be a good human. It's a pretty good bar for hopefully all of us to pass.
In the keynote, so one of the 2 sessions about kids, I just want to mention, because I think it's going to be a fascinating session, regardless of whether you have kids, is with Dr. Tracy Baxley, who is the author of Social Justice Parenting. She's been in education for over 22 years. She's a fantastic, fantastic woman and speaker, but she was the author of this book, Social Justice Parenting, How to Raise Kind Kids in an Unkind World. And so she talks a lot about how to have your kids view community as a bigger picture, how to practice radical love with your kids, and whether your kids have neurodivergencies or differences, how to open your mind to make sure that they always have a safe center place at home. And so she's just going to have a really interesting conversation about how this all ties in, how financial stability gives you more bandwidth to, make spaces for your kids and other people's kids. And so I'm really excited for her talk. She's an amazing woman.
So maybe we can talk a little bit more about the specific event. I feel like we've been talking a lot about like the intentionality behind it and the bigger picture stuff. So you said it's a 3-day event. The ticket gets you forever access, just live access? Does it depend on the...
Yeah, so the ticket gives you live access and then 30 days of replays within the Motivated Mama Society, which is our membership community. It's where we keep all of our vault. And the reason for that is there's no repeat payments. There's no you won't get recurring charged, but it also gives you, when we decided to keep it in the membership because it gives access to our whole vault of masterclasses. So we have over 45 masterclasses. And so there will be things that you learn during the weekend that you're like, okay, but I actually want to take action on getting my estate plan in place. I actually want to take action on this thing. And that way we'll be able to refer you kind of to those next resources. And you'll have continued access to me for Q&A as well. So we do live Q&As regularly within that community. And so you'll have access there. It's a live event every day from noon Eastern time till about 8 or 9 o'clock p.m. The variability in time is that we end every day with a pajama party Q&A, and we announce a ton of giveaways. Gift giving is my love language, and so we always have so many. We have over $5,000 of giveaways this year, one of which is $1,000 legacy builder grant to put towards whatever your money goals are. Awesome. And so you get interest. So those pajama parties, we start with giveaways and trivia, and then I just stay on as long as people have questions. And so we'll talk about anything anyone wants to talk about. And so each day, like I said, we'll have 3 panels every day, 2 keynotes, and 1 live workshop, which the live workshop will occur in Zoom so that we can use the breakout rooms and really get people talking to each other.
Yeah. And so you said for 30 days, people who sign up get access to everything in the Smart Mamas Society.
In the Motivated Mama Society.
Motivated
And they'll
Mama.
also and all of the replays as well. And so it's also, because it's a live event, we're going to be using Facebook and YouTube kind of auto captioning. But we really like to make sure that we have captions and transcripts for all of our videos. And so the 30-day replay, as soon as a video is done, we'll send it for captioning and everything. So if you're hard of hearing, if you want to replay it in a way that's easier to process for you, we'll also have that within the society within a couple days after the event ends.
I love that. We put our videos for Women's Personal Finance Insiders up on YouTube because of that auto captioning too. And I just think it's really important and really awesome that it's such an easy tech thing. Why does not everything do that? Because at this point, it's not like somebody has to sit there and transcribe. It's AI just getting it done quickly. So anyone who is watching videos and they're not auto captioned, reach out to that creator and be like, this is super easy, just do it. Make it it's the lowest, easiest accessibility piece, I feel like, for
absolutely. And it's getting better and better. We still send it to be transcribed, professionally transcribed, just because it gets more accurate. We get people's names right and whatever. But the fact that they can do it almost instantly, there's just no reason not to.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe this is an unfair question to ask, but what's your favorite part of these events?
Oh my gosh. There's so many things. I think my favorite part of these events is seeing the number of women who come to us and feel like they have hope and people believe in them, possibly for the first time in a really, really long time, and that they feel heard. And so seeing that community blossom, seeing so many people who hear their own stories in some of these sessions and talks and realize that hey, they used to be where I am now and they changed the outcome, and just that hope and creation is just that excitement is one of my favorite things. It's why we love live events, because you just get that interaction in the community so much more.
Gina, I feel like I've been capitalizing on the question, so I wanted to shut up if you have anything you want to add.
No, I'm taking it all in. Oh, mine just walked.
Hi, Uriah.
Uriah, you gonna wave hello? No, he's. But I do want to talk a little bit
without me.
I want to talk a little bit more about too, you saying that this is a really good kind of event to think about how you want to parent kids even before you have them. the first couple of years of having a kid is so overwhelming, and like everything kind of derails. So the idea of having an action plan, even like it's going to change clearly, but just having some intention early on, just so that you have that framework, I think is something that we could all probably, work toward doing better and helping folks.
And I feel like money is such an emotional topic, and we all kind of live in these bubbles financially where, however we were raised with money, we assume on some level that that's how everybody does it, because we don't talk about it enough. We do in this community, right? And we do in Smart Money Mamas, but in the world as a large, we assume that's how people do it. And so often I hear from moms who are like, I thought my spouse and I were like on the same page. And then we had to start to make these decisions about like money in our kids and allowance and school and whatever, that they're like on polar opposites, and they actually start making decisions just assuming the other person agrees with them, and then they don't. And so having those conversations ahead of time and really understanding what is your partner, if you have one's, money history, what are their triggers, what are the things that, you guys can come to just even understand each other a little bit better.
No, this is great. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great event. I really enjoy the fact that they are virtual events. You actually started the virtual thing before COVID hit, so you were a front runner there. And I feel like it's something that makes things a lot more accessible, especially for people with younger children. But folks across the board, it is more of a level playing ground than having to go to a specific live event. You can reach people regardless of where they are. It's way more affordable than having to like pay to travel to be somewhere. I realize that live events are like in-person events are great, but I think that we're really starting to figure out the power of events that can be fully virtual, and they can still be intimate and connected and important.
I appreciate that, you have panels and you're bringing people together, but it sounds like you've built in a lot of intentional like one-on-one and like real live time, because I've been to a lot of online conferences and conventions where it feels like it's all just pre-recorded stuff and there's not any ability to interact with people, and that's the part that's been missing. So awesome to hear that.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we're most excited about this time, is really having those Zoom sessions, having time where it's not just asking me questions, it's not just asking speaker questions. And we do have time for, after every panel, every keynote, there is time to ask them questions live, which is great. But just getting to meet other moms, I think that like finding other people who do have values that are aligned with your own, that are focused and willing to talk about money, gives you that permission to think bigger about finances. And we've seen so much growth in Women's Personal Finance and in Her First 100K and all these platforms that are fantastic on really wealth building for women. But we still have a place where so many money platforms for women are still budgeting, couponing, like really basic stuff. And we want to make sure we're empowering women to think a lot bigger than that and to know that they can control a lot more of that. And when we look over the next 25 years, the majority of wealth is going to be held by women, especially with the huge wealth transfer happening as the oldest generation currently passes away. A lot of that money is being left to women. And so taking that time now to figure out, how am I going to manage that money? What do I want to do with it? Is a fantastic thing.
Yeah. And I think too, it's that it's not just speakers. It's not just you sitting in front of your computer, passively consuming information. Mm-hmm. For those who have known me online for a while, that I started reading personal finance stuff in 2010 when I was paying off my student loans. And I did a great job focused on paying off my student loans. But once they were gone, I kind of floated for a while, especially after having my kid. But I was a completely passive consumer of personal finance content. So I knew a lot of the stuff and I read a lot of it, but I didn't, beyond like the very like floating along bit, I didn't take action in the same way until I became more connected in the community. There's just something so powerful in having other people who care about this stuff, who aren't awkward in talking about this stuff. And once you start becoming an active part of things, then that's where things really start to change.
And what you're saying, it's amazing that you didn't go back into debt, but there's someone in the comments that said they've paid down their credit card debts to zero several times, but they keep finding themselves back in debt. And what we've seen a lot in our community is that when you're fighting debt, when getting to debt freedom is the goal, right? Which is some old school personal finance advice, right? Just get out of debt, just get out of debt. It's such a letdown. You've been fighting the big scary monster for so long that once you don't have that to do anymore, you feel like you don't have a reason to make good choices. And so you kind of slide back into old habits, and it's figuring out, how do we set a bigger picture goal? And that doesn't necessarily mean a number of dollars in the bank. That doesn't necessarily mean some mountaintop you're trying to go to. But if your goal is really centered in the type of life you want to live, how you want to feel when you think about money, it's so much easier to make good choices. And that's actually something we'll talk about during this weekend. And we talk a lot about in the Motivated Mama Society is, if you're struggling with where to start, take 10 minutes and journal about, in your ideal world, when someone mentions the word wealth, when someone mentions, your budget, what are the things that you want to feel? Do you want to feel confident? Do you want to feel secure? Do you want to feel motivated? Do you want to feel charitable? And what are the teeny steps you can take right now to get you closer to that feeling? You don't have to have a big plan, because we're just trying to get the ball rolling. And that can mean reading a blog post. That can mean moving $5 into savings. That can mean journaling about your money mindset for a few minutes. How do we start taking those small steps? Because that's when the ball gets rolling and you're not a passive consumer anymore. And it gets easier to make the big choices because you've become a person who does that, instead of, I'm supposed to do this, and so I'm going to try.
Yeah. Oh, so someone in the comments is talking about a bring a friend rate. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when you buy a ticket, tickets are $49. When you buy a ticket, you'll have an option to bring a friend for $29. So it's 40% off if you want to bring a friend. And so if you have somebody that you want to bring, if you have somebody in this community, that's a great way to bring the cost down a little bit. I mean, compared to other events, I think we try to keep our tickets very, very affordable. But it's just another option, because we also just wanted you to have somebody in your real life community that's having the same thoughts as you. And I think that people ask us a lot, how do we start these conversations with our loved ones and families? And sometimes the easiest way is to be like, I saw this really cool thing. Do you want to read it? Do you want to do it with me? Whatever. Sending a podcast, sending a blog post, starting the conversation instead of being like, so do you have an estate plan? Or how much debt do you have? Like that's a hard conversation to have. And so that's why we created the Bring a Friend rate.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally awesome, because it is so different. And, we talk about wanting to attend events that you're actually active and part of. And when you have friends being part of that, it just, like, you can make it a virtual watch party with friends that aren't in the same area as you. And it, it's just way more fun with other people.
Way more fun. And that's something too. So I just want to mention that the community for the event, the Facebook community for the event, is already open. So as soon as you get your ticket, you can join. And we're doing a lot of community building stuff there already. And then the night before the event, so Thursday night, we're going to do a Zoom kickoff party. And so we'll do some trivia, some giveaways, but we're also just going to do like ice-breaking sessions, so that you can go into the event on Friday afternoon feeling like you've met some other women, for exactly that reason, that like you're not alone in this. You've met some people to go with. So
yeah, that's really, I don't know. That's totally up my alley. Clearly, like women's personal finance is about, friendships almost more than the money stuff, because when you're doing the money stuff alone, it just doesn't work the same. Is there anything else you want to add? We are just about at the end of our time. Anything else you think folks should know? You're in the Women's Personal Finance Facebook group, so if folks have questions, feel free to drop them in here later. Yes, normalize money friends.
Exactly.
It is so much better when you have people to talk to.
Just tag me if you have questions. And I think that we've talked about so much. So the last kind of thing I want to mention is, if you're looking even just for more people to follow that you align with, creators that you haven't been introduced to, I think that because we have such a diverse, incredible group of women who talk about things from different perspectives, I think this is a great opportunity to come and see over 30 different women and find a couple people who maybe you haven't met before that you vibe with, to add to your kind of virtual money team, right? And so that's always a fun thing too, when people are like, oh my gosh, how have I not heard of them? And really connect with the right people.
Yeah. So I think that's the time that I want to say that we want to give away 2 tickets to one person for this event. So that, one person, but you got to have somebody who wants to come with you. So I will maybe post this separately for that. But I think the fact that there's a big bring a friend rate, like I don't want to just give a ticket away to one person. I want to give it away to one person to bring a friend so that you can really commit to this.
I love that. Thank you, Angela. And somebody in the comments said that they can't attend because they're traveling all day 4/8. I just want to remind everybody that there will be replays. And part of the reason that we're not starting each day until noon is that if you have to miss one of the days, you can catch up on the things that were most interesting to you the next morning. So on Saturday morning, if you wanted to catch a couple sessions before we dive in Saturday, there is a lot of flexibility there as well.
Yeah. And, if you go with a friend, you can always replay it together too, which maybe it's not quite as fun as live, but replays are totally the best. So
it's a little extra layer of accountability, though, if you don't show up and you have a friend who can
go back and
go look, because I know I'm really terrible. If I don't show up live, I almost never watch replays.
Unless you're doing it with a friend and your friend's like, okay, I really want to talk about this thing.
Right. Exactly.
You need to watch it so we can talk about it.
I got to tell you guys about the level of commitment. So some of the women in the Motivated Mama Society have taken hotel points and like booked the weekend and are going somewhere with a friend just locally, like a staycation. And they're like, we're just going to like have mom time and watch the sessions.
That's
and I'm just
so
like,
awesome.
Makes me so happy to see them like planning this and like doing an in-person thing. And then we have a couple members who've like had a grandparent or something that are going to come watch the kids Saturday afternoon so they can at least like really focus one of the days. And so it's been really fun to see people think about like, how do we create space for this to really feel like it's a live event?
Yeah, no, I really like that. And way less overwhelming than being with like thousands of people in a space, because I, for one, am not doing that at this point.
Not ready.
I don't know that I ever want to do that again. Let's be honest. Like small groups, yes, but like the thousands that are like at FinCon, I just don't know if that's my jam anymore. So I'd rather hang out.
That's like a one-day thing for me. Like I don't know if I could do like 4 days anymore of just
it's
a lot.
It's a lot of peopling,
It is a lot of peopling. Whereas this way, like you can just pick your favorite people and then watch it there. So Thanks so much for joining us today, Chelsea.
Yes, thank you, Chelsea.
Thanks for having me. Like I said, comment if you have any questions for me. I'm around.
Yep. And then there's a link in the comments about the details. And then I am going to throw something up separate for giving away those 2 tickets.
Yes, so, Angela's link. So up towards the top there.
Yep. And we'll post it separately, but Mr. Algorithm doesn't like us too much on Facebook.
Have you heard about him yet, Chelsea? We've named him.
Oh,
yes.
I like that he's a man.
Yeah,
really, that's the vibe that
Uncle,
I get.
Uncle Al. Yep. Okay. With that, I think I'm going to cut us off.
Good night, guys.
Bye.